It's almost time for 100 days of less hustle and more Jesus, a devotional by Shanna Noel, and I am turning my journal into a traveler's notebook junk journal, and I'm going to show you how, tips and tricks, including how to make this really sweet lion silk flower for the cover. Here we go, y'all. Well, hello and welcome to Pink Paper Peppermints. My name is Melissa and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're working in 100 Days of Less Hustle and More Jesus journal by Shanna Noel. I wanted to do this journal this summer because having a small business and being online and doing videos is a lot of hustle. And I really need to slow down and get some Jesus in there this summer. And so I'm working on this journal. I'm getting it ready so that I can put lots and lots of good stuff in it. And I'm going to be making it into a traveler's notebook junk journal. I'm going to be dividing it up into signatures. And I'm showing you a little bit of that here now. But the first thing that we're going to do is take the insides out of this junk journal. And I'm just using an X-Acto blade to cut the inside part of the book out. And I'm going to save that for later because I've got some ideas for that. And then I'm going to cut the front and back covers away from the spine because I need to put a 2-inch spine on this. And so I'm going to do that next. I'm going to trim up that extra paper and make sure it's nice and smooth. And then what I'm going to do to create my spine is just use some chipboard. And I'm going to measure out a 2-inch wide chipboard by, I believe it's 9 3/4. It's the height of my book. So that's going to vary depending on the book that you want to use. You're going to use the height of chipboard that you need for your spine. And I'm not going to show you every step of detail of this because I've got this tutorial called Easy Junk Journal Cover that you can go and take a look at when I really walk you through slowly each step that you need to do this. And this is the fabric that I'm going to use for the spine. It's a Japanese fabric that I just fell in love with and I've been saving it for something special and I knew that this was going to be it. And so I'm going to cut it. I want to make sure to cut it so that the cute little bluebirds and the little deer show on the spine. So I'm just laying that out to decide how wide that I need to cut it and how long that I need to cut it. And typically for a 2-inch spine, I'm going to cut it about 5 inches wide, most likely. And then I'm just going to iron it to some Wonder Under, or that's also called Heat and Bond, to attach it to my spine. And I love this shot because it shows my new ironing board cover from Kath Kidston. It makes me so happy every time I iron. So I've done that now. I've ironed on my fabric to my spine, and now I just want to add some trim. So I've got some pom-pom trim. I used Fabri Fix to attach that to my spine. And then on the inside, I've just put some of the book pages. I just loved this mid-century church that was in the book and the sweet little inscription. It looks like from sister to sister, maybe on a birthday. And then on the back page, I put the very back page of the book. This book is about the Lord's Prayer, and it has the sweetest synopsis of the end of the Lord's Prayer there, and I really wanted that in my book. You can pause it and read it. It's really awesome. So I ordered some elastic for my book, and it came in and it was the wrong size. So I just put some seam binding in to kind of be a placeholder until I get the right size elastic in. And that didn't actually go as planned either, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I wanted to show you how I'm going to divide the book up. So if you look at the bottom of your book or at the top, and you can see all the little individual signatures that are attached to a fabric spine in this journal. And there are a lot of books that are put together this way. And so what we want to do is we want to cut it apart into 3 separate sections, but we don't want to cut the fabric that's holding these sections together because that's going to keep our signatures together. So I wanted to say be very careful when you're cutting this and know that your book could fall apart if you cut the wrong thing, but I think that you can always fix it. So don't let fear stop you from trying this project. So what we're going to do, we want to cut apart the cover from that part that's connected with the fabric spine. So I'm just taking my X-Acto blade, I'm taking away the first 2 pages, and I'm just going to slide right down those first 2 pages and make sure all the little threads are cut between those first 2 pages and that fabric spine without actually cutting the fabric. And then I'm just going to pull, and as I pull, you'll see it'll just gently come apart because that fabric part is not attached to the cover, and that's what helps us to be able to take that cover off without cutting that fabric. So you're going to take Again, in the back, you're going to take those last 2 pages, pull them away from the book, and you're going to go right down with your X-Acto blade and cut those 2 pages away from that fabric spine without cutting that fabric spine. You can see that I'm doing that here. And again, we're just going to pull it and tug on it. You might have to tug a little bit harder. And if you do, you can use some scissors and cut some of those threads if they don't want to just pull off automatically. And then we're done. We've got our book pulled apart, and you can kind of see the fabric underneath there. You can leave that paper on or take it off. We're going to be covering that up, so that part doesn't matter. And then we've got our cover with those extra papers, and we can cut that up and use that in different ways in the book later. So I'm going to set that aside. And now we just want to divide our book into about 3 signatures. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. I think I went with page 31 and then page 60 something. And the one thing that is important, and if you look really closely, you can see that attached to this fabric spine, there are little signatures. And so I don't want to cut in the middle of a signature. So you just want to make sure that the fold is not connected to the part that you're cutting off. Now, having said that, if you do cut some pages apart that weren't supposed to be cut apart, it's no big deal. We can tape those with washi tape. We can use adhesive to glue them back on. So don't worry about that part too much, but just if you want to keep them together, look for those little folds and make sure that we're not cutting those apart. So there's my first signature, and I've got the second part of the book, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to move that ribbon out of the way. That ribbon will eventually just come out, and we can add that back in later if we want to. And I'm going to cut where I know that the signatures are not attached and pull it apart, and now I've got my 3 signatures of my journal. And so they're going to lay in the book just like that. But before we actually insert them in, I want to reinforce those spines. Because we've weakened the integrity of those spines by cutting them apart, I just want to reinforce it so I don't have pages falling out. And what I'm going to use for that is this fabric tape from Hobby Lobby. It's like washi tape, but it's made with fabric. And I'm going to use some Fabri Fix on the spine just to give some extra security to that fabric tape, because as you know, sometimes that tape doesn't hold very well on its own. And so I've just done a bead of that Fabri Fix down the spine, and then I'm attaching the fabric tape to it and wrapping it around the spine of my signature and snipping off the ends. And then I'm just going to lay down the tape on either side as well and attach it to the top of where the tape wrapped around on both sides. And that's just going to make it look pretty. Not as much securing it, but just making it look pretty. And so we're going to do that for each one of our signatures, and then we're going to slide them in. Now, I still don't have my elastic, so instead of doing that right now, I wanted to show you how I'm going to create a closure for this. And I'm just measuring about a half an inch in from the side on each end of the book, and I'm using a Japanese screw punch, which I will link to one of those below, to cut holes in my book, and these create small little 1/4 of an inch holes. And I'm just going to use ribbon to be a closure for my book, and I'm going to tie it. I'm just going to poke it into those little holes and tie a knot. Now, I do have my elastic here, and it came in and it was black instead of white, and I just decided to go with it because sometimes you just have to go with it. And so now we are going to slip the signatures in so that you can see how those look in our Traveler's Notebook. And what I love about this is I can take these out, I can sew on the pages, I can paint on the pages, let it dry, and then put it back into my book. And I have lots of room to expand. The other thing is, if I want to do another study with Illustrated Faith, I can take these signatures out and put a new journal in. So that's going to be a lot of fun, as well as being able to reuse this book. So this is the ribbon that I decided to go with for my closure. It's a 1-inch gingham ribbon. I have a love affair with pink gingham. I cannot get enough of it. And so I just poked it through the hole and tied a little knot. And I make my ties really long because I love to wrap them around and around my book. I just love the look of that. And then tie them in a big pretty bow on the side. And so I've got my closure all done there. And for a final touch for my book, I wanted to create this flower, and I wanted to show you how I do this because you can use this in so many ways in junk journals. So we're going to be using this lion pin, and it's from one of my favorite shops on Etsy, Growing Meadows, and she has the most gorgeous stamps and embellishments and cards and these pins, and that's where I got this pin. and I love using enamel pens in my junk journals. And we're going to be using some sparkly tulle. And the first thing that we want to do is take the flower apart. And it's really easy to take these flowers apart. You're just going to pull the petals down with one hand and then just pinch that bottom part off with the other hand. And you're going to take your petals off. And oftentimes on the very last petal, there'll be an extra little clear part. Can you see it there? It's like a little cup shape that holds the petals up. And you want to pull that off and then pull the stem out. And now you have all your layers of flower, and you can do so many fun things when you do that. You can stamp on it and paint it. And what we're going to do is take little squares of the sparkly tulle and layer it in between the layers of flowers. And that's going to puff up our flower and make it all sparkly and pretty. And then we're going to use our lion pen as the center. So I'm just going to take the pen apart and I'm going to put it right through the center of my flower. And then I'm going to connect it back together on the back. Now, you can glue it to your book after you do that, or instead of connecting it, you can poke it through your book if your book isn't too thick. My book is a little thick, so I'm not sure that part is going to work for me. I'm going to try it that way, but the back might pop off. So we'll see. I might have to add some glue to it. But that's it. That's how you create this gorgeous silk flower embellishment, and you can use that in so many different ways in your junk journaling. Well, I've already started working on the pages of this journal, and I'll be sharing those with you in the future. I wanted to let you know one more thing. My charm tassel is from Kitty Witty Papercraft. I know that you will ask me about that, and I will link her below. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, would you give it a thumbs up or maybe share it with a crafty friend? And I will see you next time here on Pink Paper Peppermints.